anyways, okay, so, well, and then I said, okay, alright, well, maybe, maybe they just have bad experiments, but maybe they have, maybe there's still some kind of truth to it. Maybe you can indeed have new species. And then I asked myself, following question is that, okay, let's imagine that you have a group of individuals from the same species in a certain environment, and then so this would be the first generation in that environment. We'll call it the first generation. Now this generation will be from the same species, so they will everyone will be able to mate with one another of the opposite sex, of course. And so then they will have a certain DNA that will be from the same species. And now, so let's take two individuals of the opposite sex and let's mate them. Let's make them mate. Now you learned that in biology is that the female and the male will each give half of their genetic makeup to their son, to the offspring. So the next generation, the second generation, is going to have the exact same DNA than both of his parents. Half from his father, half from his mother. So the second generation has the same DNA as the first generation. So therefore, how can they be a different species? It's impossible, right? But now you take the second generation and they mate and they create the third generation, but they're giving the same DNA. So how can they give the same DNA as they received and create a new species? This is nonsense, of course. So the third generation is the same species as the second generation, which is the same species as the first generation. And now you do this you can do this for 1,000 generations if you want. It's always the same thing. The nth generation is going to give the same DNA that it received from the nth minus 1 generation to the nth plus 1 generation. So every generation is connected in a sense by its DNA. You can imagine with a chain like that, and you can imagine that this part that I'm holding up is the first generation. And it's giving its DNA to the second generation, which is the second link on the chain. And the second link, the second generation, is giving the same DNA to the third generation, third link. And then they're all linked together because it's the same DNA. It's just half, but originally it's the same. So the first generation and the last generation, they have the same DNA. So they're from the same species. So how do you explain that? How do you explain that you go from one generation of a species to a generation of another species in the end? How do you explain that? That's my challenge to evolutionists. I'm not saying the theory of evolution is wrong. I'm not saying speciation is wrong. I'm just saying, first of all, I'm saying, why do you believe it? Who convinced you of it? Is it, This is the question I asked myself, I looked, and that's what I saw. Is it this? How do you explain that? You at least you have to agree. The answer that you were gonna get, I'm sure, is time. Time does it. Takes a lot of time. You can't see it, in a human life. It's too short. You can only get 100 years, And evolution takes thousands or even millions of years, Alright, no problem with that, but you still have the problem of, even if you start with 1 generation, you go with 1,000 or 1,000,000 generation. And where does the change in the DNA come? And how does it occur? You know? That's the question. Then again, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying, you know, why do you believe it? Oh, it seems possible, or it seems probable. But that's not enough, you know, at least you're acknowledging that it's a belief. And it's not a science. But the problem with evolution is that they say that it's scientifically proven or consistent, but it's not. You know, the proof they have is not a proof, it's absurd. So if you agree that it's a matter of belief to you, and you don't have really any proof to it, especially this one, the challenge that I propose, I mean, you have to acknowledge that it has the exact same validity as intelligent design, as is understood by the evolutionists, or at least the same validity and value as creationism. Because creationism, you go to a creationist and say, okay, what do you believe? You believe that God created the world in 7 days and blah blah blah. Okay, and you're saying, okay, you know, you believe that, all right? Maybe I can respect that, but you know, is it true? I mean, you know, why do you believe that? You know, why do you believe that? And then what they're gonna say, oh, you know, because it's like that. What's like that? You know, if they were honest, at least they would say, you know, I believe that because, you know, I grew up in a certain environment, and you know, it was kind of imposed on me. I didn't choose it, you know. But then the evolution is, you know, you choose it. But why do you choose it? You know? I mean, how do you explain this change of species? You know, it's not that you're allowed, you know, you have the right to believe that, you know, but you don't have the right to lie about it. You don't have the right to impose your thoughts, your beliefs on others. That's what you don't have the right to do. You know, it's, why do you believe it? And at least if you admit that you believe it simply based on, you know, taste, I mean, don't impose it on others, you know, or research it and maybe find a way to prove that the theory of evolution is true, is right, you know. Alright, I think that'll be it. I hope it doesn't shock too many people, but this point of the creation of new species is crucial to accepting or rejecting, at least maybe temporarily, the theory of evolution, because I clearly show that there is no explanation to it. So I'm challenging people, if they can bring a decent explanation to the creation of new species and the transmission of DNA and the change of DNA, how and when does it occur? And for others who are maybe not that informed on this subject, at least have the decency and the honesty to challenge their own beliefs and ask themselves, why do I believe that? And at least maybe acknowledge that it's a matter of belief to them. Alright, thank you.